What is a 1 in a million thing that happened to you, that will never happen again? Honestly, the chances of being born a human are astronomically low. Out in a boat on a lake trying to catch fish. Not having any luck. See an osprey dive out of a tree into the water. Osprey comes up with a fish and starts to fly away. A bald eagle dives out of another tree and attacks the osprey in mid-flight. Osprey drops the fish. Eagle continues to rip into the osprey. Pretty cool, right? Not over yet. A huge raven drops out of a third tree, plucks the falling fish out of mid-air, and flies away with it. No one believes this story. I mean, it is a fish story, right? I'll never see that again. Damn smart raven, eh? Was at Dave & Buster's for a friend's wedding reception probably 10 or so years ago. I wanted to play skee ball. I'm not really good or anything, just liked playing, and their machines were in really nice shape. Get $5 in tokens, and the very first game I got a bunch of 100s and ended up beating the score to win the jackpot. I had like 860 points or something. Flashing lights, siren going off, everyone looking at me. It takes about 5 minutes for all the tickets to spit out of the machine. It was a giant pile on the floor. Meanwhile, I just wanted to play some skee ball. It finishes and the teenager minding the counter climbs up to the top and resets the jackpot counter. I put in another token and wham! Did it again. Bunch of 100s. Another jackpot, much less this time. The kid working gives me this look like I cheated. You can't play anymore. I gave all the tickets to my friend's daughter and she went on a shopping spree. As many rubber balls and plastic trinkets to last her a lifetime. I don't know if it is 1 in a million, but my wife started leaking amniotic fluid at 21 weeks. They told us there was nothing they could do for the baby. We were so anguished at the thought of losing him. The fluid was very low and she was constantly leaking. They wouldn't even admit us to a hospital until she was 23 weeks, it was about 10 days out. It was the longest 10 days of our life. We were going to the doctor constantly just for them to monitor and get a sonogram. The day before she hits 23 weeks my wife says she doesn't feel like she is leaking anymore. Our fear is that she has ran out of amniotic fluid. On the morning of 23 weeks we go to the doctor and get a sonogram. The plan all along was as soon as we hit 23 weeks, we go to the doctor's office to confirm fluid level, and then they were going to send us to the hospital straight from there. Somehow the amniotic sac that was ruptured has sealed. To everyone's surprise, the fluid was back to normal range. We are all in shock. The doctor tells us to just take it easy and we can head home. My wife delivers our son at full term with no health issues. Everyone at the hospital tells us how lucky we are to have the amniotic sac seal. After the birth the doctor tells me that in the 40+ years of delivering babies, he could count the number of times on one hand that he has seen amniotic sac ruptures heal. I don't know the odds, but I do know my wife and I are incredibly lucky to have our little man. He is 10 months old today as well. I had 2 houses burn completely down 2 years apart from each other. I hope to God the odds are now in my favor. Fun facts: nobody in the houses smoked, stove was not on, and of course no insurance. House 1, the heating unit caught fire. House 2, it was the hot water heater. Yes, the S haunts me to this day. I was substitute teaching a gym class. The class was sitting at the 3-point line. I was facing them, telling them what we were doing that day. Had a basketball on my hip. Kid raised his hand. I bet you can't even shoot a basketball. I stared at him and tossed it backwards over my head with one hand. They howled in shock. Apparently it went in. I never broke eye contact with the kid. All right. Line up. Cool cats don't look back. Once upon a time, my brother and I were arriving late at night to a little cabin in the woods. It was winter, it was pitch black outside, and it was freezing. We needed to get a fire lit ASAP, but the firewood was stacked outside the back of the cabin, under the porch. Now, my brother and I used to watch a lot of horror movies together, and again, it was the middle of the night, at a cabin in the woods, it was winter, and it was f-king freezing and pitch black outside. We decided to flip a nickel to see who would venture out to get the firewood. And here's the part that answers the question: the nickel landed on its side. Nobody went under the porch that night. Was smoking outside a hotel in a place a few cities over from me. Homeless man comes and asks me if I can buy him some food. Got to talking over some cheesy chips. Homeless guy was my estranged cousin. I took a job in a somewhat remote area of northeast China about 20 years ago. I had 2 roommates, one American and one Canadian, and we were part of just a handful of foreigners out of about 2 million Chinese in that area. Fast forward 10 years and I'm back in the USA. I was dating a girl who was going on a girls' trip to Mexico. She and her girlfriends went out to a bar and got to talking with another group of people. One of the guys there started showing photos from his travels and lo and behold, there I am. He was my roommate from China a decade before, and while chatting with these girls decided to share the pictures of his travels. After a few of those prove that you know him questions, they both flipped out. I was about to fall off the staircase at our flat, but my reflexes kicked in and I was able to do a handspring and flip forward to land on my feet. It won't happen again, and I sure hope I don't come close to falling like that. I was doing a hike in Maui, and at the top of the hike was a large waterfall on a sheer cliff face. The moment I got to the waterfall, I heard this earth-shaking rumbling. I could feel the sound, kind of like heavy bass through speakers. When I looked up at the waterfall, a couple of huge rocks were falling down. If I had been a minute faster on the hike, I would have been right below those rocks as they were falling. Terrifying but also breathtaking to see the power of nature. I was playing beer pong years ago. Definitely past my limit on drinks. This really pretty girl shows up to the party and asks how to play beer pong. I start explaining the rules, and when I got to trick shot, she asked what they were. Never breaking eye contact, I threw my ball up, which hit the ceiling fan blades, which were going at full speed, and went straight into a cup. After laughing for 10 minutes, we all tried to recreate the hole-in-one. Never even slightly close. Bit of context: I have lived in Sweden for the last 2 and a bit years with my soon-to-be wife. I am originally from Wales, UK. I went to Stockholm to visit a friend for her birthday party. Pretty fun. On the way back home on the train, an old man is sat next to me talking to his wife, who was sitting on a chair directly in front of him. He was speaking in Swedish, so I asked him if he would like me to swap seats with his wife so we could sit together. I noticed in his response that he had a Welsh twang to his accent. I asked if he was Welsh and he said yes. Turns out he grew up in the same area as my father and went to the same school. I was amazed at the coincidence, and say fairly loudly it's crazy that the first Welsh person I meet in Sweden is from a small town, where my father grew up. At this point a guy from the other side of the carriage stands up, walks towards me and says, "Hi, I'm XXXX, this freaked me out because we have the same name." Turns out it gets weirder. Not only do we share a very uncommon name, we also went to the same school, and weirdest of all, his best friend is my best friend's big brother, and there have been times when we have been in the same house together, but never interacted beyond basic greetings. This really freaked me out. Anyway, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Before Google, I am old, deal with it. When I was in college, I was trying for about 12 hours one day to remember the name of the instrument you use to take your blood pressure, sphygmomanometer. I was obsessing about still when I went to pick up beer for a party that night. The store didn't have the beer I wanted, so I grabbed some random seasonal mix pack. Helped myself to one when I arrived at the party and opened the bottle only to find that the bottle caps had riddles and trivia on them, and mine said, "Pressure's on the top and sphygmomanometer on the inside." When in middle school I had this strange nightmare. I was at my elementary school again, walking down the hall to leave for the day, then the halls emptied out and I was walking alone. Then I hear someone call me into the cafeteria as I was about to walk by it. In there was a teacher of mine sitting next to the school's speech therapist, who was a kind of creepy lady, and beside them sitting at the lunch table was a small Jack Russell dog with its back turned to me. For some reason it was this eerie David Lynch-like vibe as I walked up to them. They asked me to sit where the dog was. I said something indicating I couldn't because the dog was there. Then the dog turned around and there was this horrific blurring of all the colors in my vision and I woke up. So, just a weird, seemingly meaningless dream. Years later, I am high school aged and watching TV flipping through channels, and the cable keeps having some weird interference where the colors on the screen look like they smear around. Suddenly I flip to a channel with a rerun of the show Frasier and the Jack Russell from that show is sitting in a chair with its back turned. It turns to the screen, and that exact moment the colors on screen blur like in the dream. Just a coincidence, but still, was super weird and eerie.